Matt Medved here for Billboard Dance. We've got Above and Beyond in the building.
Hello.
Hello.
How's it going, guys? How was your Grammy week?
It was good. We didn't have much Grammy action, though, did we? We did a show, but yeah.
We're in a hotel with some, I presume, other Grammy-nominated or winning artists, and there's a big clump of people outside. But aside from that, and seeing a bit of it on TV, it's not really affected us this year, which is...
Well, I know you guys have had a very eventful week, releasing your new album, Common Ground, and also playing at Barclays Center. Let's start with the album first. Tell us a little bit about Common Ground and what your sort of creative approach was on it.
Yeah, on this album, we tried to give every song its space. We used a lot of analog gear, so we wheeled out like a Roland Jupiter 8, Mini Moog, all that kind of stuff. Wanted it to be quite an organic sound, didn't we, really?
Mm-hmm. And we've kind of used the A-list of singers that we've known over the last 17 years of making music as Above and Beyond. As the first Above and Beyond album with Justine Suisse on. She's previously appeared as a side project called Ocean Lab, but as most people know, that's us. So it felt like the right thing to do after Acoustic when we included her and the songs in that show. And Richard Bedford, back from a little hiatus, is singing our Man songs again for us, which is lovely to hear his voice again. And Zoe Johnston is on there as well. And we also did a track with a young guy from the north of England called Marty Longstaff. So it feels like it's the A-team back together. And I think it's had probably, I mean, you can't really trust your own Twitter feed, but if my Twitter feed's anything to go by, it's had probably the most, the loudest positive reaction to a new album that I can remember since we started putting them out.
That's great to hear. Was it refreshing to move back towards a more like full outfit approach after doing the Acoustic tour and album?
Yeah, I mean, I think the nice thing about doing the Acoustic is that it's a kind of holiday from your day job. You know, we've been doing dance music, well, I mean, I've been doing it since I was a kid, but professionally for about 17 years. And so to do a project like the Acoustic project is really nice because it's just something different. It's kind of a vacation from your day job. So to come back and then do an electronic album after that, you kind of feel refreshed and have new ideas because it can get really stale if you're doing the same thing over and over again. So we found that really valuable, I think, yeah.
Speaking of the Acoustic album, I know you guys have the documentary premiere around it tonight, actually, in Chelsea, at Chelsea Sinopolis. Tell us a little bit about the making of that documentary.
We, I think as soon as we realised that the scale of the tour that we were going to do with Acoustic, it felt appropriate to try and capture it in every way that we could. And since, you know, who knows when we'll get to play Acoustic at the Hollywood Bowl, we thought we'll record that properly. So we hired a guy called Paul Dugdale who did the Rolling Stones documentary in Cuba. He's, you know, one of the best live directors out there. I think we had like 19 cameras. And we've had a filmmaker who's travelled with us for a number of years called Miles Dizenberg, who we thought, why don't we do a proper, full-length documentary with Miles? So it felt, you know, it's one of those things. When you go on holiday, you take more pictures than you do when you're at home. For us, this was kind of a special event, so we wanted to capture it in every way that we could and see how the documentary turns out.
Were there any like surprises or interesting things that, like anecdotes or stories from the making of that documentary?
No.
It's all there. It's all
funny.
there.
I think it's hard for us to say what's going to be interesting. You know, when it's like, you know, seeing yourself talking about yourself on TV. Who knows whether anybody's going to find that interesting? It's hard for you to say when you're inside it. I think it. Yeah, we'll have to see what people think about it, really.
And let's talk a little bit about the tour. You know, obviously Barclays Center sounds like it was a smash success. I know you guys also played at the LACC in Los Angeles, and you have Navy Pier dates coming up in Chicago. Tell us a little bit about what your approach was on the tour in terms of the performance, the show, and the stage production this time around.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a lot of new visuals that we've designed for this show, which is exciting. We've got some new confetti as well, haven't we? Which seems to be becoming a bit of a souvenir. You'd have to see the confetti to see what we mean. But yeah, we're doing 30 dates in total. We started last Thursday in Philadelphia, which was great at the Fillmore, wasn't it? Yeah, we've got. I mean, we're lucky because we've already got a couple of the club mixes from the album to play. That's always a problem because our albums tend to be not so clubby, and then there's this kind of gap before we can actually get to play those songs out. But this time we've luckily got a few in the bag. I'm trying to think what else about the tour already.
I think what we try and do is do some big shows, but also do some small shows. So you'll see if you look at the schedule, there are like Tuesday and Wednesday night shows in what would be classified as small towns, basically. And I think every time we've been to the States before and done these kind of exhaustive bus tours, some of the most cherished memories for me is when we sort of pile into this tiny town and shoehorn this enormous production into a tiny red velvet chaired theatre. There's one place we played in Missoula, I think. I remember all of the stage fittings were sort of pulled up and down by ropes and sandbags and stuff. The thing was really kind of a million miles away from an electronic dance show. They'd never seen anything like it. Plus, we get to do the big places like Bill Graham and the Barclays Centre, and obviously the LA show was a big production too. So it's a nice mix, and I think for us doing a similar show every night in a similar venue would kind of get a little bit dull. But it's been broken up by some of these tiny theatres and smaller towns. And personally, for me, when I travel across America, it's the places that I haven't been before that always seem to be the most interesting. It's lovely to come to New York. We have so many friends and family here, and it changes as a city every week. So many new buildings going up, but still, when you go to, some tiny town, and certainly in the Midwest, there's a magic to America which I'm really glad that we get a chance to experience.
Yeah, I agree.
Who pushed the button at the Barclays show?
It was about 4 or 5 people, wasn't it?
I think 5.
We don't know their names, though.
Maybe, and for any fans who are tuning in who maybe haven't seen you live, maybe you can also explain.
Yeah, so, I mean, this basically years ago, I think it was in San Diego it started, right?
Could have been.
I think it was Pavo and Tony were playing a show there. Let's pretend it's San Diego anyway, just for the purposes of this explanation. But yeah, I think Tony, we had a gap, a kind of moment in Sun and Moon where there's a kind of build-up of reverb, and then the riff comes in, and Tony paused it and basically just found someone to press the button to re-trigger the riff.
There was a guy on stage with a video camera.
Yeah.
We'd put this gap in because obviously people, when you hear a record a few times, you know when it's going to come back in again. So we thought it would be fun to put a pause in it. So we did, and literally the first night we played it out, there was a guy with a video camera wandering around on stage, as there often is. And I just grabbed him, and he sort of filmed his own finger pushing the start again. And we didn't really think anything more of it, but of course the video went out, and then pretty much the next night there were people at our show with these signs, please let me push the button. So it kind of invented itself.
A lot of the stuff does invent itself, and then we kind of blow it up a little bit after that, yeah.
Well, it makes sense because you guys have such an engaged fan base.
Yeah. No, we're really lucky in that regard. I mean, I think because we never really signed to we did put out tracks on major labels, but we kind of, in the end, ended up building our career gradually. So the fan base has grown with us, rather than sort of having this big marketing spike and, then the fans kind of disperse after that. We've kind of had a steady growth, so, yeah.
Makes sense. And, of course, you've still got your group therapy show. Tell us what's the latest on that front.
So, yeah, we just did ABGT 250, I lose count, in Seattle, well, outside of Seattle in Washington State, and that was amazing. I mean, that was another situation where the fans kind of owned it because they started referring to the show as a festival, didn't they? And we suddenly realised, yeah, it is kind of a festival. It's not just a gig. It's not just ABGT. It's it's a live festival now. So we're hoping to do some more of that kind of stuff as well. But it was at the Gorge, which is, I don't know if you know the Gorge very well, but it's an incredible
gorgeous
venue.
venue.
Yeah, it is gorgeous. There you go.
Literally.
It's very pun friendly. But yeah, we broadcast it live from there, and we had Oliver Smith, Sonny Lax. I'm trying to think who else we had. Latrell, Yotto, yeah. And it was 7 Lions. It was great.
We haven't decided where we're going to do it this year. We've kind of raised the bar to a point where it's very difficult to kind of follow up the gorge. It was such a perfect place for that show. But we try and move that annual birthday party around the world so that other people can experience it more easily. And we're still yet to decide this year, so we're not holding back on anyone.
Yeah, everyone asks us, and they just assume, you know, when we're on the road and stuff, industry people ask us where it's going to be, but we don't actually know yet, so still working it out.
You know, being creatives and producers and having the opportunity to travel around the world and experience so many different cultures, I'm always curious to hear if there are just any sounds or styles of music that are currently inspiring you.
It's difficult when you do what we do to find time to listen to anything else because we're always working on gig night. So our exposure to often we'll go to a country and people will ask us, what we think of the dance scene that's happening in that country, and we really have no idea because we're only in the country for a while, but we bring this kind of noise and cacophony around us. Everybody wants to talk about us, so. We're probably the worst people to tell you what's going on outside of the room that we're playing, just because of the nature of the job that we do.
I think it's so global now as well. What I love about, you've got stuff like Spotify, obviously. You can just, you've got the whole world's catalogue there, and I think it's an amazing time to live in, really, because you've got everybody's record collection, in a sense, haven't you? And you can discover all that music. So, I don't know, I think it's so global now. The borders have come down in a way.
But I'm very excited about the new King Cruel album. I love King Cruel. He's still only 24. He has a number of pseudonyms that he works under. His real name's Archie something. I can't remember his second name. But he was on David Letterman when he was 19. He's a bit of an acquired taste. I wouldn't say he's mainstream in any way, but he's extraordinarily talented. And I've only heard 2 tracks from the album. I just started listening to it this morning. I don't know what to say about streaming. I haven't bought it or anything. I just pulled it up and I'm excited to hear the rest of that.
Your album's called Common Ground. I watched the music video, of the same name, and I was struck by sort of the message of unity, and finding common grounds we obviously live in pretty divided times. You guys being from the UK, where Brexit's kind of hanging over things. Here in the US, we have Trump and a lot of there's a lot of division. So was that talk a little bit about that concept and your intention there?
Yeah, I think for me, there's so much focus on the division, on which side you're on, Brexit or in or out, Trump or not. And I think it's just really important, to remind people or to remember as an individual, we do actually have more in common than what divides us. And that's, I suppose, the message of the album for me. You probably get a different answer from everybody.
No, I think you're right. It's sad in some ways that we need to kind of point that out. But you're right. I think one of the things that the internet has done is completely changed the distribution of opinions about things in the world from, I'm guessing, on almost any subject, go back 100 years and feelings would be a kind of like a normal distribution. There'd be a lot of people in the middle, maybe undecided, and a few people extreme. And what the internet seems to do is like a spin dryer, has whacked everybody to the edge. And it seems now like everybody has to have an opinion about something or somebody. They have to have a position on things. We have to have a label. We have to have a race and a gender and a sexual orientation label that defines us. And I think for me, there's one race on Earth, the human race. We all come from Africa. Everything else just depends on how far back you want to go. The divisions that we try and put in place, and I actively do it with regard to the sports team that I support. But these things are just labels that we put on, and we really are all the same underneath it all, in so many fundamental ways. And I think that's really what Common Ground is trying to remind us, really. And it's a shame that we have to do that, but I think it's the nature of the world that we live in that requires it.
Yeah, I mean, for example, we've done shows in Beirut and Tel Aviv, and they are countries, those cities are, in countries that are at war with each other, and when you meet these people, they do have a lot more in common than you think, and it's kind of bizarre in a way when you strip it back.
I know you guys just kicked off the tour. I'm sure that's kind of your primary focus right now, but what can you tell us about what else you have in the works going forward?
Not very much.
I'm looking at you.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think really for most of the time, just before the album was finally finished, we were spending all of our time in the studio in London finishing it. And, you know, some of the stuff that's on there appeared very, very close to it being finished. In fact, some of the music on the album appeared after it was mastered, and we went back in and did it again.
And Tony put some guitars on.
Yeah, some reason we just sort of discovered the guitars again.
Yeah.
What we will be doing, as well as touring over the next few months, is doing more club mixes of the tracks from the album. And I think maybe later this year, actually not sure when that will come, there's some other things that we prepared for this album that didn't quite make it. And I think we might be doing some EPs of those tracks, and some of the instrumental tracks that we've already played on the radio show that haven't been released will be part of that EP series as well. So some more music from us.
That's great to hear. I'm sure the fans out there will be excited. And I think we should kick it over to them for a few questions, if that's all right.
Sure.
He's coming in live off the...
These are coming in live.
In terms of acoustic, no plans as yet. We sort of consider it this beautiful car that we know it works. It's sitting in the garage getting polished at the moment. We haven't got a plan for a journey yet. And with regard to ABGT 300, is that the next one?
Yeah. I think so.
We're not sure. You'll know as soon as we know. It's really in our interests to tell you as soon as we know, so that you can start preparing.
But we don't know.
We don't know yet. Yeah. Somewhere on Earth. It'll be on Earth, I think.
We hope.
On Facebook asks, are you guys going to be able to do pictures or anything when you go to Burlington next Tuesday?
If you can catch us for a picture in Bellington, we're always open for a photo, so yeah.
We have Rebecca on Periscope asks, what are some of your musical influences outside of the electronic music?
You want to go first?
I like kind of miserable indie music. I love Damien Rice. I love the Chameleons. I love My Bloody Valentine. I love R.E.M. I love Crowded House. I love Jake Bugg. I love King Cruel. I love loads of things. I tend not to go for heavy metal and reggae. Apart from those things, pretty much everything else I love from time to time.
Yeah, I kind of grew up with a lot of 80s and 90s stuff. Before that, well, actually also a lot of jazz. But yeah, New Order, Pet Shop Boys, Depeche Mode, Jean-Michel Jarre, Genesis, loads of kind of 80s and 90s stuff. Electronic, which was a side project after New Order as well. I was really into that. So I think, you know, all of the stuff you listen to when you're a kid, probably, at least for me, comes out in your music, really.
We had Jean-Michel Jarre here last year, yeah.
Great guy. We did a remix
great.
for him as well, actually, yeah.
Last one we have, Rob on Facebook asks, Common Ground seems a lot more vocal than previous albums, apart from Signs of the Sea. Was that on purpose, and if so, why?
Is it more vocal?
I don't think we sort of think about it like that necessarily.
No, I mean, we kind of, when we're putting together an album, we're sort of looking at the balance of it. So if it's come out too vocal, maybe it isn't balanced. But yeah, we try and find tracks, rather than being vocal or instrumental per se, we're looking for certain flavors almost that we put on an album, aren't we? So if we have too many tracks that feel a bit too happy or too many tracks that feel in a certain space, we'll try and juxtapose them and contrast them with something different, won't we?
All right. Well, thank you guys. Appreciate you guys coming
Thanks for having
in.
us.
For the fans out there, check out Common Ground. Check out their tour if they're coming to a market near you. And stay tuned for the Acoustic Tour documentary.
Thank you.
Thank you.